Brothers and sisters, I, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. Ephesians 4, verse 1. Paul writing to the community of Ephesus saying, I urge you to live in a manner worthy of the call you have received. And to live it out with all humility, with all gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to persevere in unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Of course, what does God call people to be? St. Paul goes on to say later in Ephesians, and he gave some as apostles, others as prophets, others as evangelists, others as pastors and teachers, others as friends. We could interpret this as motivators, as advocates, as confidants, as people helping other people experience Christ. You see, each and every one of us are called by God to a unique vocation. Yes, maybe we could say it's the vocation of marriage, or the vocation of holy orders, or the vocation of single life. But God is calling us even more than just to that. He calls each and every one of us a unique way of living our life, that we have a certain purpose in our life, and that He is calling us, He is calling you to live it out. For what? For the unity of our church, and also as a gift back to God, and a gift back to each and every one of us as well. Of course, when we start thinking about this, it can be a little daunting, can't it? God wants me to do what? He wants me to live as a saint? I can't do that. That's not for me. Well, it is. But you're right, you can't do it by yourself. This is why St. Paul says as well, but grace was given to each of us. Not just to a few of us, but to each of us according to the measure of Christ's gift. If God calls you to something great, He also gives you all the grace you need to accomplish this. And God does call each and every one of us to something great. And He's always there helping, lending this hand, assisting. And of course, today we celebrate this beautiful feast, the solemnity of the Ascension, where Jesus rose to heaven, but has not abandoned us. Of course, next week we'll celebrate Pentecost, the Spirit coming down upon us. But St. Paul as well says in our second reading, he says, the one who descended is also the one who ascended far above all the heavens, that He might fill all things. And some of the things that He may fill is us, with the grace, with the ability to live out this vocation that we have been called to. What does it mean to be called, by the way? We give a very practical example of this. A couple weeks ago, there's a bunch of college athletes, at least former college athletes, waiting, staring at their phone just like this. And they're looking, saying, when is that GM from the Vikings going to call me? So I'm waiting to be drafted. That's what it means to be called, of course. We use another example. Maybe you want an audition for a play sometimes. What do you wait for? You wait back for the callbacks. You're waiting, you're anticipating this call. Maybe you applied for a job. You're saying, I wonder if they're going to email me back. What if they're going to call me back? This is what it means to receive a call. We're always receiving calls left and right. We're always being just bombarded by them sometimes, so maybe sometimes too much. Do we ever stop and listen, though, to the call from God? He's not going to call you on your smartphone. He's not going to direct message you. He's not going to Snapchat you. He's not even going to SOS or send you a telegram. How is God going to call you? It's through prayer. It's through prayer. We talked a little about this last week as well. But to develop this relationship, this friendship with God, we must spend time with Him and to ask Him this question. God, what are you calling me to do? Of course, He's not just going to say one thing and say, this is what you're called to the rest of your life, other than glorify me. But this is a question we're called to ask every single day. God, what do you desire of me? And hopefully in your life you've experienced people who have lived out this call. Maybe it's your grandma or your grandpa. Maybe it's your parents. Maybe it's your spouse. Maybe it's your friend or coworker. Someone you know that they're living for God in everything they're doing. And And that because of what they have done, they've made you a better person. Because what they have done, they've helped you in your Christian faith. Because they've responded to this call from God. And hopefully we have those people in our life. Hopefully we are that to some people as well. But the church in our infinite wisdom as well has given us examples of people who have responded to this call of holiness. This call that God has called them towards. Of course, these people are called saints. Yesterday, we had the ability to confirm 18 students here from St. John's, from our parish. Some of them are here today. That's very good to see, of course. One of the great things about confirmation is you get to see what saints they choose. I always like to ask the confirmation students why they chose their saint. Now, some very popular ones are St. Francis. He's kind of an amazing saint, right? Another one is St. Sebastian, because a lot of them want to be athletes. So he's the patron saint of athletes. But another great saint out there, relatively new saint that a lot of students choose, is St. Maximilian Kolbe. And the reason why is he kind of lived an amazing life. And what he did is he responded to God's call. Of course, maybe you're familiar with the story of St. Maximilian Kolbe, maybe you're not. So I'll share a very brief story about him, why he's known throughout the world. St. Maximilian Kolbe was born in the late 1800s, and he eventually became a priest for the Franciscan order. He was a priest in Poland. And in 1941, he was still an active priest, Franciscan. Of course, in 1941, we could think of World War II. When the Germans invaded, they eventually took him captive. And they sent him off to prison camp. They sent him off to Auschwitz. So when he was there, Father Kolbe, Maximilian Kolbe, ministered to the people. He was looked as someone who would bring hope and joy and love. He spread the message of the gospel near and far, as we hear about in our gospel. But a certain event happened. What happened is a prisoner escaped from the camp. And the commander, to deter other people trying to escape, said he was going to take 10 prisoners and put them in a bunker and starve them. And one of the men that he chose was a man named Franciszek Gnwosek. And when Franciszek was chosen, of course he started to freak out. He cried out, "My wife, my children." And St. Maximilian heard this cry and he said, "I will take his place. I don't have any children. I don't have a wife. I am a priest. I will offer my life up instead of his. So let him do this." So St. Maximilian and 9 other prisoners were put into this bunker. And when St. Maximilian did this, he started to pray with them. He led them in devotions. He led them in prayers and hymns of singing out praise to God, even in the midst of the suffering. He was able to bring Christ to them. Eventually, all the other prisoners passed away, and St. Maximilian was still alive 2 weeks later. From starvation to dehydration, it was not affecting him. So eventually they poisoned him, and he was put to death. St. Maximilian Kolbe did the selfless act. And because of living out this call from God, 75 years later, thousands upon thousands of students every single year use him as a saint that they want to follow. All because St. Maximilian, what he was doing was living out God's call. And as a matter of fact, it was a call that St. Maximilian received at a very young age. At the age of 12, St. Maximilian was spending time in prayer. And he had a vision of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the Blessed Virgin Mary called him. I'll use his words to say what happened. "That night I asked the Mother of God what was to become of me. Then she came to me holding 2 crowns, one white, the other red. She asked me if I was willing to accept either of these crowns. The white one meant that I should persevere in purity, and the red that I should become a martyr. I said that I will accept them both." At the age of 12, St. Maximilian Kolbe had this vision. He asked the Blessed Virgin Mary, he asked her what was to become of him. And he lived out this call. The purity, of course, in joining the Franciscan order, a life of celibacy, a life of chastity. And when Franciszek cried out, "My wife, my children," St. Maximilian Kolbe knew what he had to do. This was his call. Of course, he could have walked away from it and no one would have said anything. No one else is volunteering their life. But he felt that he was called to do this. For a young age, he knew that he was called to live this life as martyrdom. My brothers and sisters, are we all called to be martyrs? Probably not. But is God calling us? Yes. Are we going to have visions of the Blessed Virgin Mary? Maybe, maybe not. If it is, it would be a private revelation, more than likely. But God will speak to us. He will call us. What we have to do is listen to it. And this call from God is not just meant to benefit us. That's not what it's about. When Mary made this call for Maximilian Kolbe to take this life of martyrdom, it wasn't for the benefit of himself. It wasn't so he'd become a saint so we could talk about him 75 years later. Rather, it was for the benefit of the whole community, of all of Christianity. It is said that in our vocation of service, be it marriage or holy orders or single life, it's not so much a gift that we receive, it's rather a gift that we give. In my priesthood, hopefully, if I'm living it out right, you see it as a gift towards you. In your marriage, hopefully it's a gift towards your spouse, and in turn back to you as well. This is what it means to live out God's call. We may benefit the whole parish, the whole community, the whole church. And God is not just calling the select few. He's calling all of us. He's calling you, saying you have a unique role in this world. Maybe no one's going to preach about it. Maybe no one's ever going to even know about it. But it's unique. And it's a call to help out the whole community, the whole church. Let's listen to that call. Let's respond to that call. Let's build up our church and love God in all that we do.